Westside Gunn just dropped his new album And Then You Pray For Me, which is the sequel to 2020's Pray For Paris, which in my opinion is one of the best, if not the best hip-hop album of this decade. Because of this, my expectations and the expectations of most Griselda fans were through the roof. I'm gonna say off rip that in my opinion, this is one of the best albums to be released this year. However, the album has been met with a lot of mixed reviews online. And if I'm being honest, some of the criticism is justifiable. Sonically, this album is a little all over the place, and despite this album having, in my opinion, 11 amazing tracks and a few others that I like as well. It's a 21 track album, so that means almost half of the album isn't so amazing. I personally have a lot of respect for Westside Gunn experimenting outside of his usual boom bap New York sound that everyone knows him for and is the type of music that everyone wants from him. And while a lot of the trap records for me were some of the weaker ones off of first listen, they've definitely grown on me over time. For example, my first reaction to Costas was that Benny and Conway both slid on their verses. Benny in particular was in his element, and if Conway is being truthful, that he really did record that straight out of surgery and still feeling the effects of the anesthesia, I think off that alone, he should be the MVP of this album. Westside Gunn, on the other hand, at first, I didn't really like his verse. I felt like it was one of his weakest performances on the album. It just didn't sound right. He just didn't really fit on that beat. But as I continued to run this album back, his verse did grow on me a lot. I did kind of like the pocket he got in and how it differs from Benny and Conway's verses. Now, despite the album being a bit too bloated, I think a simple change to the sequencing on this album would have gone a long way to changing the public perception. Kitchen Lights is a fan favorite, and personally, my jaw literally dropped when I first heard it. That song, unequivocally, should have been the intro track to this album. I did like having a song like Mama's Primetime being the first true record on this album. It gave us a classic Griselda song with a Conway feature, and we had JID on it giving his typical S-tier quality feature verse. But it doesn't properly set the tone to follow that song up with a Tay Keith produced trap song and then randomly have two songs with DJ Drama yelling over them, and then we never hear from him again. And also later in the album, Westside Gunn sprinkled in a Trapaholic song, he sprinkled in a DJ Holiday appearance, which I appreciate paying homage to those mixtape DJs, but that's got to be your whole album. You can't just like randomly do a few here and there, but then the rest of it is like boom bap, and there's like a random trap song here. It's just, you get to track 5 and you're confused with what you're even listening to. And I honestly think these records would have been much better received if they were just placed on the end of the album and almost just felt like they were bonus tracks instead. There's also been a narrative online that all of the weakest songs on this album were produced by Miguel the Plug. I think the criticism is way too harsh. I personally love Dunhill with Rick Ross. That's one of my favorite songs on the album. I think Rick Ross sounds like he's right in his element. And I really enjoyed Ultra Griselda. I think it probably needed a second verse from Denzel Curry at the end, but that's not a production issue, so I don't put any of that on Miguel the Plug. I will say the rest of the records he produced were weak to just okay to me. 1989 was decent. I like a pitch down Westside Gunn, but I don't think we needed a full verse of him rapping pitch down. And I do think it probably needed someone like a Rome Streets or a Boldy James giving it 8 or 16 bars to kind of switch it up from both Westside Gunn and Stove God Cooks, who kind of have very similar styles. But again, that's not a production issue. LL Bull Gun is okay. It has its moments. The production isn't amazing, but I also don't think Westside Gunn gave his best performance either. Freddie J's featuring Peasy, I probably won't come back to. I don't really know if it's the production or the performance of the artist or what, but that just song didn't really do it for me. I will admit the production on Disgusting wasn't great, and Giggs, honestly, if you know what he's capable of, he gave a pretty lazy performance. Westside Gunn, though, I thought he was pretty good. He had some funny lines. Like, I like the whole concept of the song. It's classic Westside Gunn just being like, I'm rich, you're poor, so that means you're disgusting, ew, gross. Like, that's funny, and I like that from him, and I thought his performance was decent. But Giggs felt lazy to me, and this is probably Miguel the Plug's weakest production on the album. But a lot of the songs that he produced, I think if you view them as weaker songs, I don't think it's really like just solely at fault of the production. In my opinion, the worst song that I will not come back to is JD Wrist. That song is just kind of a mess. Apologies to Fly God Jr., but I get that it was supposed to sound like a 2009 Gucci Mane Trapaholics mixtape, but it just didn't work. It wasn't it. The song was a mess. Westside Pootie was on it though. Love the Westside Pootie appearance on his albums, but I love hearing Westside Pootie talk shit. That's funny. So it stinks that I'm not going to probably hear her talk shit on this album because the only song she talked shit on was the one I liked the least. And I did not like SD Nack's weird whispering verse. Like, I just didn't get it. It just did not sound good. Like, the whole song is just kind of a mess. I will not be coming back to that one. Now, on a more positive note, in addition to Kitchen Lights and Mama's Primetime, The House of Glory, Babylon Biz, Jalen Rose, and The Revenge of Flip's Leg were some of my favorite Westside Gunn songs that we've ever gotten. I think Rome Streetz is slowly becoming my favorite artist in the Griselda world. I think a lot of Griselda fans agree with that. The Revenge of Flip's Leg is a classic. Rome Streetz went crazy on this. Westside Gunn did great. Conductor Williams did his thing. And if I'm being honest, like, he's getting up there with Alchemist as one of my favorite producers making music right now. And I like the Glory to the King sample sprinkled in. I thought that was a nice touch to the song. Stove God Cooks obviously had a ton of highlights. He was probably the MVP of this album. Kitchen Lights is the big hit that everyone was talking about online. But Babylon Biz and House of Glory, he had great performances. Those are two of my favorites. I think he deserves a lot of praise. And I really just want him to drop his next solo album. We haven't gotten an album from him since 2020's Reasonable Drought. I know everyone's probably clamoring for it. We basically get full albums from him on Westside Gunn's album, but I really would like to get his new album soon. So we'll see when that happens. On the House of Glory, I don't know if what I'm about to say is going to make any sense, but I love when Westside Gunn sings badly. The imperfections in Westside Gunn's music, to me, is what makes his music so addicting. It's raw, it's authentic, it sounds real. Baby, why you leave me? I only fucked her 100 times, but I love you. And Babylon Biz is the perfect Westside Gunn song. Like, if someone were to ask me to play them one song that represents Westside Gunn's music, I'd play them this. It has the perfect amount of skirts and boom, 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 booms. And at the end, you get Keisha Plum talking, taking us out of the song. I mean, everything about this is vintage Westside Gunn and vintage Griselda, and I love this one. Jalen Rose being one of my favorites is also not a surprise when you get Derringer on production and you get a feature verse from Boldy James. I mean, Boldy James, like I was talking about Rome Streetz being one of my favorites, Boldy James is right up there too. This song also had one of my favorite lines from Westside Gunn where he just yells at the top of his lungs, I had more threesomes than twosomes. The only thing it was missing was a nice skirt at the end. If it had a crazy skirt at the end, that would have been mwah, mwah. And last song I want to highlight, Chloe is amazing. Ty Dolla $ign is the feature god. There is no disputing that. And I think Wes did a good job of taking what's supposed to be a very sexy song and making it sound very Griselda-esque. The lyrics are over the top dirty and you get lines like Westside Gunn repeating, I'm trying to kill you, which in a vacuum is strange and weird, but also at the same time, it fits perfectly into the Griselda aesthetic. Overall, like I said earlier, I really enjoyed this album. I think it's one of the best hip-hop albums of the year. I think my expectations were a little too high, given that it was supposed to be the sequel to 2020's Pray for Paris, which again, as I said earlier, in my opinion, is one of the best hip-hop albums of this decade. There's a lot of amazing songs. It's a little too bloated, a little too all over the place. I think it would have been good if he cut it down a little bit. And like I said, change the sequencing, I think would have went a long way to setting the tone off right to begin the album. And people need to really start giving Westside Gunn his flowers. He's super underappreciated for his influence and impact on hip-hop. I mean, you can even hear a soundbite from Tyler, the Creator, on this album, where he's on Instagram Live talking about how Westside Gunn inspired him to rap again, and that's what led to him making a Grammy Award-winning album and Call Me If You Get Lost. There's also very few artists in hip-hop, if any, who give other artists the spotlight on their own albums like Westside Gunn does. I think he should get more respect for giving other people their shine when he knows he has a spotlight on him. And yeah, that's about all I got. Let me know in the comments what you think about my review, what you think about the album, if you agree or disagree with what I had to say. There's going to be a lot more content on this channel coming out like this video, and I'm going to have a lot more other types of content on hip-hop and R&B music coming your way. I got a new studio it's a work in progress. It'll look a lot better than this, I promise. But there's going to be a lot more content coming on this channel. Make sure you subscribe. Don't miss a thing. I'm Don Chenz. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.